And we are live. Welcome to another edition of HBCU to Startup. I'm Austin Clark, the co-host, and I'm also co-hosting with my sister.
Hannah Clark.
And we are joined today with the Forbes 30 Under 30, Jewel Burks. How are you doing today, Jewel?
I am great. Can't complain at all. Excited to chat with you guys.
That's great. Thanks for being on this chat. We have a lot of great questions for you today. But we also want to remind everybody that's tuning in that you can ask questions as well. If you look at the upper right-hand corner of the Google Hangout, there's 9 boxes, and if you click on those, you can see the Q&A section, and you can feel free to ask questions, and we'll be sure to get them answered. Cool. So let's get started. Jewel, could you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how did you get into entrepreneurship?
Sure. So I was born in Mobile, Alabama. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. I went to Howard University, HU,
No.
and majored in marketing there, so School of Business. Straight out of school, I went and worked at Google, did enterprise sales for a couple years out in Mountain View, and then decided that I wanted to be closer to home. So I actually left Google, moved to Atlanta, and started working for a parts distribution company. So something totally different. And it's where I came up with the idea for Partpic. Partpic is my startup. We do visual search for replacement parts. So we make it super simple to find nails, bolts, screws, washers using computer vision technology. And we license this technology to distributors, retailers, suppliers to embed in their mobile apps and on their websites. And I have been working on Partpic for almost 3 years now. And I also am back at Google doing a cool role, sort of an entrepreneur in residence, helping other entrepreneurs learn how to leverage the power of the web. So I have 2 jobs, work a lot.
Well, too much work is better than no work, right?
Yes, this is true. This is true.
So, how did the original idea for Partpic come to you? I know you said you were working in a field that was related to that, but how was that an aha moment for you, or was it like a gradual process?
Yeah, so coming to this industry, into the parts industry from Google, I had culture shock when I started at this company. I was a little bit frustrated, thinking I just made a huge career mistake, and I'm going from one of the best places to work to a place that was not nearly as fun. And the biggest problem I had with it was that the technology there was frustrating. The systems would go down really pretty often. I was managing a call center, and so we relied heavily on things working and us being able to input orders. And so anytime that system was down, it was pretty frustrating. And then also, since I was managing in a call center, I was the person who got a lot of the escalations from our angry callers who we sent the wrong parts out to. So in hearing their complaints, it sort of occurred to me that there was a problem in the search process for parts. And so people were having difficulty explaining what it is they wanted to purchase from us. A lot of times they didn't know how to describe the part, or they didn't have a part number. And so coming from Google and coming into this industry with sort of a fresh pair of eyes, I felt like there was a way that technology could solve this problem. And that just really got me curious. And then on top of that, my grandfather was having a similar issue. He was trying to find a tractor part and couldn't find it, and wanted me to help him find it, and I couldn't find it. And so that was a really frustrating experience that sort of was a straw that broke the camel's back in terms of me wanting to start something to solve this issue of part search. So that's kind of the origin of Partpic.
Wow, interesting. So what would you say is the biggest difference between working for a company and being the CEO of your own company?
I'd say the biggest difference is the fact that working for a company, if you miss a day or if you're sick, it's not the end of the world. it will
Hmm.
go on. The company will still run. They will still make money. You know, your team might miss you, but generally, like, there's no effect. Whereas
Got you.
with a startup, you're really important. Like, the productivity of the day, what gets done and what doesn't get done, the leadership direction, everything is really tied up in your presence, especially at the
Hmm.
beginning, and especially when it's not very many people. So you really have to show up every day. It's
Got
like
you.
people say no days off, and that's pretty true. So that would be the major difference, I'd say, between running a company and working for a company.
Got you. Thank you. When a lot of people do startups nowadays, they say, let's go raise money, let's go talk to investors. But what's interesting about your story is that you actually raised $200,000 in pitch competitions. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I knew that because I'm building something that's really technically challenging,
Hmm.
that it was going to be some time before I had the metrics that investors want to see. And so I needed to get some capital to get people paid that were helping me build it.
Got you.
And I just really had to get creative about how I was going after that. So I had early success with like idea pitch competitions and felt confident about the idea and how I was able to pitch it. And so
Hmm.
once I won one competition, I was like, oh, this is kind of easy. I can do this. And then I just started finding out about other competitions. And if there was a check size over $10,000, I pretty much entered the competition. And then I got on a roll. And so I was like, okay, yeah, this is mine to win. And once I realized like this is actually a good way to continue funding the business as we are essentially de-risking it for investors, um, it was kind of my method for doing that. So yeah, I enjoyed the pitch competitions for sure and winning especially.
Of
Most
course.
definitely.
So, one thing I'm kind of wondering is, so after you had left Google and you're working at a construction-related company, how did you manage the pitch competitions while also probably working somewhere else and having this idea for Partpic? How did those things like, what did that look like on a day-to-day basis for you?
Yeah, so I actually didn't really get into the pitch competitions until I quit my job.
Oh,
I think I did maybe the first one or two while I was still at the company I was working for. But I really spent, I'd say, 6 months while I was still working, just doing research and not before I ever pitched it, before I ever really told people about it. I was spending the time this is kind of not so great, but I was spending the time while I was still working there to pretty much do market research and understand as much as I could about the industry and make sure that I felt confident that if I did quit my job, that this is going to work. And so I spent that time before I felt like I had saved enough money and I got into an accelerator and like I had a destination. So I didn't really get started in the pitch competitions until I was working on Partpic full time. Um, and so yeah, it wasn't probably the in terms of like the timeline. It was I came up with the idea like around December 2012, January 2013, around that time frame. And then I didn't quit my job until June of 2013. So like 6 months after I came up with the idea, which honestly I feel like was probably a little bit too early. But I got into an accelerator, so I started the accelerator in July of 2013.
what
And then
accelerator?
it was called NYC Seed. I actually don't even know if it's running anymore, but it was a place for me to go. So that
I
was the
got you.
main thing. I just wanted to have a place to work on it with full attention. Um, and so, yeah, did that and then realized like 6 months into working on it that I hadn't saved enough money. So I needed to get a job again. So I needed to start back work, but I was still working on Partpic, so doing both, and I've actually been doing both for 2 years now.
So while everybody is checking Facebook, you're researching Partpic and
Yes,
doing pitch competitions.
yes. There was
Double
definitely
agent.
a where I was not. I was like completely cut off from friends, and people were like, "Is Jewel okay?" Because I was so honestly like obsessed
I love how you
with
say completely cut off because people, they'll be like, "Oh, come do this, come do that." I'll be like, "I can't do
Oh,
anything right now."
yeah, you
everybody has
definitely have,
plans.
when you're building something and I think there has to be this period where you are giving it 100% focus. Um, and yeah, you're just like heads down, just knocking it out. So I definitely I have that it still happens every once in a while where I'm like, oh, I have to get this thing done. I can't talk to people.
You
So
just disappear for a second, right?
yeah,
Ghost mode.
yes.
Wow. I just want to remind everybody that you can click on those 9 boxes at the top right corner and ask questions.
I see we already have two that have come in, so we're gonna talk to Jewel a little while longer, then we'll get to the questions. But the Q&A thing is a blue little word box that you can click on, so we can make sure we have a lot of questions lined up for Jewel.
Most definitely. So what's your average day as a CEO look like?
Um, I'm trying to make my days more regular. I'd say if you would ask me this question, 6 months ago, I'd be like, "There's no average day." But that's one of my things for the new year was to get into more of a routine.
Hmm.
So I'd say I wake up pretty early. Try to do some like calming things in the morning to get my mind right for the day, because usually it's pretty hectic. Um, so then, get up, check email, try to
Hmm.
get to the office, so into Partpic office, and we have a morning meeting, so like a daily stand-up that I attend with my engineering team, and that gives me, it's a really quick meeting, 7-minute meeting, just hear about what everyone's doing, what obstacles, if anyone's facing. So attend that, try to get a sense for where we are on any deadlines, or like right now we're working on something for a particular customer, and so try to get a sense of where we are with that. And then the rest of the day is a mixture of meetings. Right now I'm gearing up to raise another round of funding, so working on perfecting and changing my deck, looking at metrics and numbers, and now sort of getting into having more of these investor conversations. And then I also still work at Google, so I have a
Got
series
you.
of things that I'm working on there as well. So whether it's planning an event or doing some strategy work around diversity, that's it's just a hodgepodge of meetings and work all
Got you.
day. And typically, I'll definitely like break for lunch. I try to have lunch most days, um, and I'm typically working pretty late. So I usually don't get home until around 9 or so. Try to get some dinner, and then get back on my computer, and that's pretty much life for me.
Got you. So is your startup office one of those offices that you ride around on scooters or segways, you know?
Not we don't have one. We don't have a Segway or one of those
Hoverboard.
hoverboard or anything like that. We did just get a drone, so
Okay.
I
Okay.
was having fun with the drone. But yeah, we're trying to make it more fun. Right now, we're 9 people. We
Got
just
you.
more, pretty recently moved into a new space. So we like got a couch, got an ab roller for people to work out between like
Got you.
meetings and stuff. We have some games and we have snacks. I love to eat, so we always have snacks in the office. So yeah, try to make it a fun place to work.
Sounds great. So I have a question for you about how you developed your team, and you put people together with various skills and talents to help you progress your idea.
Yes, so I would say this is probably the most challenging part of running a business is getting the right people. Um, it requires a lot, having to interview people a lot, and right now we're hiring. So if anyone out there is interested, let me know, hit me up. But it's a lot about one skill set. So, like I mentioned, what we're building is really hard. So having the technical skill set, and honestly, it's hard to tell in the interview if someone can do what they say they can do. And so we oftentimes give like small little projects just to verify that, if you are a software developer, that you can use all the languages that you describe on your resume, for example. And there's also a lot about personality and making sure that the person will be a good fit for our team. And there's a type of chemistry that we're trying to cultivate. And so that's something that I look for a lot. So yeah, it is not a perfect process. I haven't figured out the perfect process for it. I've had people come on the team and figure out, okay, this isn't a good fit, and so they're not on the team anymore. And that's sort of hard, I guess, as a manager and as a leader to figure out, okay, this person isn't going to fit, this isn't going to work, and have to part ways. But that's kind of part of it. So it is an ongoing process, I think, to get the perfect team.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine. I know me and Austin deal with some of those dynamics in college, but I know when the stakes are higher, it must be a whole lot more intense.
Yeah, and when there's money on the line, I mean, it costs to bring somebody on. So we love to recruit people that are local to Atlanta, but we're really trying to get the best out there. So we've done, relocation packages and all that, and it's expensive to hire people. So it matters a lot to make sure that they're good.
Definitely.
So along those lines, kind of wanted to find out, what would you give as like your top tips for people entering pitch competitions? What judges usually want to hear, and some of the things that differentiated you? Because obviously you're very good at pitching.
Obviously.
Yeah, so I think that, of course, you want to make sure that you have a solid idea that's well researched and that people haven't heard before. I think, a big piece of my success in pitch competitions has to do with the fact that people felt like, oh, that's a really great idea, and I'm surprised I haven't heard it before. I'm surprised I didn't come up with it myself. So there's a level of sort of simplicity with the idea. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, like, oh, it would be really cool if I could take a picture of a part that I was looking to replace. That would make the whole process easier. That's a quick thing that people just get. And a lot of times they match me with a story, like, oh, there was this one time where I was fixing something in my house and I wish I could have had Partpic, So it's an easy and sort of relatable idea just to start with. And then from there, it's like, oh, and also there is a really interesting technological advancement with the idea. So, having some type of cool or interesting or novel tech related to your idea is also something that I think can differentiate you in a pitch competition. The other piece is like your team. So especially the earlier you are, making sure that you are uniquely qualified to do whatever the idea is super important. So in my case, I have the background of working in the industry and really living the pain of people not being able to find the parts. And then also working at Google and knowing that search can be better. Working at the #1 search engine and sort of having that juxtaposition of both things. And then recruiting my co-founder who was working at Shazam, and Shazam being the #1 mobile recognition company out there. And us coming together and making like Shazam for parts. And so that's a compelling story for a lot of investors and a lot of people judging at pitch competitions. So I think it's all about the idea, the technology, the team, and also having a big market size, and also just being confident in the pitch as well.
Wonderful. So let's get into these questions. I'm starting to get a little bit of an echo, so if one of you might need to turn down your speakers just a little bit. So we're going to start off. I'm going to apologize in advance for these names, and however we pronounce anything, we're going to do our best. So Baye always says, how has being featured on the Forbes list impacted you personally and professionally?
Yeah, so it just came out not too long ago, so I think it's been like a week or 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But it's been super cool. It was really an honor to be selected for that list. Kind of surprising, honestly. And it's a lot of people that I really admire that are also featured. But so far, it's been good in that we've gotten a lot of interest from different parties. Customers that I've been wanting to talk to have reached out, and so that's cool. That was really my main like desire in the feature, that customer like companies would see it. Um, it's also been cool personally because, for example, my favorite designer, I was wearing her dress in the feature, and she tweeted me, so I was excited about that. um,
Be
but
like,
yeah,
hey,
I
we can
think
make a deal, you know.
it's
Free dresses.
right. That's why I'm like, I'm trying to get this brand ambassador thing
Yes,
going. I'm like, I love your
ambassadorship.
dresses, so what's up? Um,
Yup.
so no, it's been pretty cool. I think that honestly, it's just motivation to keep working hard, because I feel like I have so much more to do. But it's nice to have a little recognition sort of along the way. So yeah, it's been cool.
Cool, cool.
Great. So we have another question. This question is from Daniel A. Deyanja,
Hey,
and he
Daniel.
says, how do you find time to do things outside of your business, such as giving back to the community, taking time for yourself, and kind of what is your philosophy of a work-life balance?
So I find time for the things I care about. That's a fact. Like if you follow me on social media, it's really easy to see that I'm really involved with my family. There are groups and community service organizations that I really care a lot about, and so I just make the time. Like I just got home from visiting my family this weekend. So I'll be on the road. Like I'll do quick turnarounds just to say hello, or just to go to my little brother's basketball game. You know, that stuff is super important to me. And I think it's just like sometimes sleep is not the most important thing, or you know, sometimes it means like I'm not going to be up on the latest television shows. It's like honestly, there's more time in the day than people think. It's all about how you spend it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just have decided there are certain things that are super important to me, and I'm not really willing to compromise on them. And that's just from learning. Like for example, when I lived out in California, I wasn't able to spend a lot of time with my family, and I wasn't really happy with that. And so that was a decision that I made. Like, I want to be close to my family. I want to be able to spend time. There are certain groups that I want to be able to spend time. And also I am able to sometimes involve my work, like sort of blend the worlds. So, for example, with Google, I'm able to support two organizations that I care a lot about, Walker's Legacy and Amplify for Good, which is a nonprofit in Atlanta. So I'm able to sort of mix my work with the people and organizations that I care about, which is a way to get it all done.
Oh, thank you,
Cool,
thank
cool.
you.
So we have another question from Bai Awe, and he says, what is your philosophy on workplace culture,
She
given
says,
given the online climate that large tech issues, I mean, that large tech companies are facing with diversity? And how do you, as a manager of a startup, ensure your company remains inclusive?
Yeah, so I think that, if you look at partpic.com and look at our team page, you'll see we are very diverse. Um, and I'm happy about that. And it's been a function of, you know, finding the best people. And to me, in building my own company, it's like, well, of course, I'm going to have a diverse company because that's something that's important to me. And I also think that it's just like the best way to get it done. I think it's interesting, of course, the whole diversity conversation. I'm involved, in it, sort of both sides. I work at Google, and so I've been involved in it from that perspective. But my sort of stance is the way to impact diversity in tech is to either start or join an early stage company, because you can be at the sort of forefront of the conversation. If you start a company, then you're already impacting the numbers, right? And if you join a company, then you are too. So especially for those of you who are in college and thinking about what you want to do, startups are a great way to get involved in tech. Even if you're not technical per se, you can do marketing, or you can do operations, business development. There are a lot of different roles. So yeah, I think that it's obviously something that's top of mind for me. I think a lot about how people can bring different experiences and backgrounds and what that means to my company. And I think that, of course, larger companies should be doing the same thing.
Okay, thank you. Well, the questions are rolling right in, and we have another question from David Egerton Jr. He says that this year he's looking to start his first company. He has a tech background and an MBA, and he was wondering if you could provide some overall tips regarding building a team, funding, and making pitches. You already talked a little bit about making pitches, so maybe you could talk a little bit about funding.
Okay, so I would say that, first of all, before funding, if this is your first company, one thing I wish someone would have told me was you really have to get your mind right before you get into this. I think that it is more of a mental exercise every day than anything else, of basically just reassuring yourself that you can do it, because it's really hard. It's not easy to start a company, and there's going to be a lot of times where it's really stressful. It can be depressing, lonely, like every not so great adjective you can think of.
Founder's fatigue.
Yes. You're not gonna be able to sleep as much. You're gonna lose out. You're gonna lose friends. People are gonna be going out and having fun. You're gonna be working on your company. All of that. So I think a big part is really just preparing yourself mentally for how challenging it's going to be, and also reinforcing every single day, like, you can do this. You got this. For me, a big part of it is maintaining faith and being prayerful about it. That's a big part of it for me. So that's the first thing I would say. The other piece is, I think, before you think about funding, you need to think about how you're going to sustain your life while you're building the company. So whether that is making sure you save up. I think that people get it wrong about, like, thinking that somebody else is going to pay for your life before you build anything. So making sure you have enough money saved up and that you're going to be okay if you don't get one investor or if you don't get one customer while you're building something, I think is super important. So just like save up money. You should be your first funder. I put, I don't even way more money into Partpic than you would imagine. So that's one thing. It's like you need to invest in you before you can expect other people to. What else? Then I think the process is like, you want to first make sure that what you think you want to build is something that people will pay for. So you can do that in a number of ways of sort of interviewing people. I think the lean startup methodology is what I point a lot of people to make sure that it's worthwhile for you to even pursue whatever the idea is. And then once you feel sure that what you're thinking of is going to be well received and people are going to pay for it, you need to start building something. So even before you go to try to find an investor, you need to have something to show them. You need to build something. And then once you've built something, you need to try to get people to use it. So whoever it is, you need to try to amass some type of user base or customer base. So either getting people to use it and getting a ton of users, or getting people to pay for it if it's a more of an enterprise thing. and then you can go and talk to investors. A lot of people get that process wrong. Honestly, I kind of got it wrong, and that's why I had to do pitch competitions, because I realized, oh, I'm not really ready to talk to investors yet.
I love that moment when you're pitching and then they ask you like those first two questions and you're like, oh shoot, I never thought about that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a sequence to it.
There's levels to this, right?
Yes, for sure.
You're like, why wasn't that in my PowerPoint? That's a good question. It's like they ask one question, like everything comes falling down, and you're just like, okay.
Shatters. That's why if you can go like last and you can edit your pitch deck right there. Pro tip, keys to success. Okay.
No, man. Typos are real, you know. Like sometimes you just have to, you know, go for what you know. But you know, everything, there's a context to everything. But another thing I wanted to say, as far as just like starting a company and success, is that in the media, the image we're often presented with of success, even in Silicon Valley, is a meteoric rise to success, or a person who just started last month and then, you know, they got 1,000 or 1,000,000 downloads in about 3 weeks, and you know, now they're on the cover of a magazine, and like that happens, that's great. But if you look at history, if you look at some of the great founders that we all admire, their stories are not like a linear progression or a very clean graph that just goes straight up. It's kind of like a going up and down action, and that's okay. Yeah. That's often the way life works. So that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but it's a part of the process that we have to be aware of and embrace to a certain extent. Just like Jewel's talking about how she has those periods of time where ain't nothing else happening but this work, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's up? I'm working.
Yeah, and you know, case in point, Airbnb, they hit hard times, and they started selling Cheerios, literally.
Yeah. I love those infographics that talk about the beginnings of our favorite, you know, success stories now, and how a lot of times it takes time. It's not an overnight thing. We might hear about it and feel like, oh, this just came out, but no, these guys have been working for years.
And then that might not even be their first company as well. They might have had 2 other companies before that.
This is my third startup.
So the experience that they gained, you know, leads to the success.
Yes.
So, you know, so good to put that in context.
Yeah.
So we have some more questions we're going to keep answering. I want people to keep sending in questions. You have to be signed in to your Google account in order to post a question. It's just a Word box. Blue Q&A like button that you can click that should be to the top or to the side, and we can continue on. So we have another question here from Daniel that says, what would you say is your core competency, and how do you leverage that and other things in your background to make investors confident in your abilities as a CEO?
Sure. So my core competency is marketing and sales. That's what I went to school for. So I feel very comfortable in, and you can, I mean, it's probably pretty easy to tell because we've had success in those arenas. So I feel that's where I'm at home, is like if I'm talking about Partpic, if I'm selling Partpic, that's my comfort zone. I'm really comfortable there. I would say that that's been beneficial in some ways. It's been challenging in other ways because Partpic is a tech company. I am not an engineer, so I've had to really learn a lot in a short period of time to be an effective manager of engineers, and I'm still learning. That's probably the biggest thing that is an everyday sort of challenge for me, is building my skill set so that I can be an effective manager of engineers. And so that I can be like an asset to my team in ways outside of just running my mouth about Partpic, and sort of like being the face for the company. So it does take the like reading about Scrum and understanding how to do product management, and understanding how to do QA, and you know, figuring out how to use Rally and set tasks and all these different things, to be more of an asset to my team outside of just selling the dream and selling the vision, which is really natural for me. So yeah.
Okay, cool. You mentioned that you went to school for marketing. Me and Hannah actually both attend Howard University as well.
Yay.
So talk a little bit about that experience, being in the illustrious School of Business up on the hill. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so yeah, I went to Howard, started in 2007, graduated in 2010. I was really eager to get into the workforce, so ended up leaving early. I graduated early, but I think that Howard was really a great place for me to learn hustle, honestly. Um, Howard is a competitive place. It is a place where you're going to have to sometimes deal with, administration, and it's not going to always be easy.
Yes.
And so I think, I got knocked down a little bit at Howard and learned how to have tough skin. Um, and I would say, and also built really great relationships. I got great exposure. I think it's very few universities where you can build the type of resume you can build at Howard through the School of Business and the 21st Century Advantage program. I was able to intern at Goldman my freshman year, intern at Google my sophomore year, and it's just like I don't know where else I could have done that. So yeah, I think from a lot of different perspectives, Howard gave me a good foundation for what I'm doing now.
Okay,
Good,
thank
good.
you.
So you
Um,
guys made a good decision in going to Howard, I
hey, we
Thank
gotta inform everybody that there's still time to transfer.
think.
Yes, there is.
So
It's lonely at
we're
the
gonna
top.
try to go kind of rapid fire through some of these questions. I don't. There's this person on this hangout, and his name is This Begins. So
His or
whoever
her.
you are,
Oh.
interesting name, and we're gonna go rapid fire through these questions. And I don't know if he was here, he or she was here in the beginning, but they wanted to know what prompted you to start this company.
I think the easiest thing I can say is just frustration. I was really fed up with the current process, and I wanted to make a better way. So
That's
that was
great.
the
That's
problem.
great.
Okay.
Oftentimes people say, your startup should be something you're passionate about, either something you love or you hate. So wherever that passion is, there might be a business or an idea. And then we got another question, and the question says, have any books or key figures been integral in shaping your mindset in regards to becoming a founder?
Yes. Um, Honestly, I think there's such a learning curve in starting a business that I am obsessed with reading. I've recently become obsessed with podcasts because it's like you get a lot of information in an hour time
Love
period. You
podcasts.
can just listen. And then, as I mentioned, like the mentality is so important. So I always talk about this book, The Four Agreements. I love this book because it really helped me shape my mind so that I could deal with things. Like there's one agreement about not taking things personally. Don't take
Hmm.
anything personally. And I think that's really helped me because in starting a business, you're going to get tons of no's. I tell people I had like over 120 investor meetings to raise my round. And so that means I got a lot of no's. But keeping going to the next meeting and the next meeting meant that I couldn't take the no's personally. I'm
Got you.
also a really big fan of, if you're just getting started, I think like a good starter book and that has a well-rounded theme about starting a business is The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Love that book.
Yeah, it was a good book.
Um,
Um, Back to the mentality thing, a book that I highly recommend is called Little Voice Mastery, and it's
Hmm.
about mastering or sort of coaching the voices in your head. Sounds kind of crazy, but it really helps me out a lot. Because I cannot stress enough how much all of this is about believing that you can, because you're going to get in so many different avenues people telling you that you can't, and you have to be really set in this idea that you can. So,
Definitely. Can
Okay.
you list any specific podcast favorites for us?
yeah, so I really like Tim Ferriss, his podcast, because it's all about like he brings on masters or like people that are really great in their field. He had an interesting one recently he has interesting ones all the time. One that I really liked was about his morning routine. So like I mentioned, I'm trying to make more of my life routine, and so he had some cool things about like making up the bed every morning and how that little action makes you feel like you're in more control throughout the day. And I started it, and it actually works. Yeah, so that's a really good one. I like the startup podcasts. I really like all the podcasts that Gimlet Media produces.
Okay.
I like one that I think is just funny is Denzel Washington is the greatest actor of all time, period. I like that podcast. I really like Denzel Washington, so it speaks to me.
We all do.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites.
Good, good.
Cool. So we have another question from Marion Pugh, and she says that she's a software test engineer and is curious, how as a startup you approach quality assurance in your software, and how do you balance the demands of being a startup with bringing on new roles into your company?
Yes. So we have just gotten into the point where we have a part-time resource that is managing our QA testing right now. We've tried a few different ways of doing this. So like whether it's outsourcing QA testing, now we have someone who's like basically a contractor who's doing sort of just running all these tests on our app and on our API. That is something that when we raise more money, we're going to bring in-house and have more resources just dedicated to testing. But it's just sort of like when you're building the company, you have to figure out how do you maximize your money, obviously. And so sometimes that means not hiring someone full-time because full-time hires can be expensive. So yeah, that's our short-term solve, but with the next round, we're going to have more internal testers. So if you're interested, jewel@partpic.com is my email.
Hey, guys.
And then the second part of that was, how do we manage, what was the second part of that question?
The second part was, how do you balance the demands of being a startup with bringing on new roles into your company?
So it's all about planning, and this is actually a really hard thing because we never have enough people. That's the thing. And with being a startup, it's like we always have more work than people. And so it's difficult to manage this. It requires everyone to be fully engaged and fully bought into the fact that we are a startup and we're not like a 9-to-5. Everybody has to work more. Everybody has to put in more. With the idea and with the knowledge that eventually things will level out a little bit, but right now it's like everybody's required to give, 150%. And so, yeah, we hope that with more resources, we can make it so that it's more of a sort of normal work schedule. But it's a hard thing. That's a really challenging thing.
Got you.
Definitely. Somebody posted the Howard hand, so we gotta acknowledge that. HU. Okay, so back to an actual question. We have Gregory G. Greenlee, and he says, being that you are not from an engineering background, what pieces of advice would you give to another non-engineer founder when it comes to managing and picking a team?
Okay, so you have got to find people who can supplement your knowledge. I think it's too hard to hire engineers without having an engineer verify or validate that they're good. So you have to find, whether it be like an advisor or a friend or somebody who can view this person's GitHub account and look and make sure that they're legit and that they have the right experience. And you have to know something about what you're trying to build. So, I mean, a big part of before I could hire people was like, what am I trying to build, and what components do I need? What skill set does the person that I want to be on my team have to have? I can't just hire like, a Java developer if what I'm writing is in C++, like or whatever the situation may be. You kind of just have to know like what it is that you're trying to build, what's your end goal, and then if you don't know enough, you just have to know when you need to bring other people in to supplement your knowledge. So.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question again from This Begins. The question is, in my interest in tech ventures while at Howard University, I found many people weren't really tech forward there. How did you source talented developers?
Yeah, so you got to get out. You got to get out of your comfort zone in that regard. I mean, I think Howard is working on being more tech forward. I know of some things that have happened since I left and are in progress, but you got to get out of your comfort zone. Unfortunately, I don't think DC has like a super strong technical school. I guess maybe that's debatable, but I don't know of any super strong engineering schools in DC proper. But that doesn't mean that there aren't like badass developers in the area. And
Lord Howard, because we're here, I'm telling you.
Well, yeah, of course. I know you guys are killing it. I know, but I'm just saying. My recommendation is if you can't find the people on campus, or like if you guys are busy working on your own thing and you don't have time, go to meetups. Like get in the city. The best thing about DC is like there's everything in DC. DC is a great city. There's a lot of stuff going on in the startup scene in DC. I was there a couple months ago and attending some events, and I was like, oh, DC is kind of popping on this startup scene. So go and meet people. Go to meetups. There's a ton of places where you can just sort of get to know people. A lot of people ask me like, how did you find people for Partpic? I went on Georgia Tech's campus. I know there are some great engineers on Georgia Tech's campus, so I went there. Like, started to talk to people, started to meet people. You're not going to find anybody like sitting at your house. You're going to have to get out and talk to people. So yeah, that's my recommendation for that.
Very good recommendations. And to that person at HU, I definitely say you can, if you tweet me or message, post on the HBCU to Start Facebook group, or just somewhere where you can get in contact with me or Austin. We can definitely put you in contact with other people on campus who are passionate about tech. And we're also getting a group of people together to go to the DC Tech meetup on the 27th, which is another meetup on meetup.com, which is pretty big as well. And then we have our next question from Helen G. And she says, regarding what is your #1 mistake or fail for the past 30 days, without disclosing the details, how would you prepare yourself to resolve, basically, how do you learn from the mistakes that you've made, and if you have like an example in the past 30 days?
In the past 30 days, biggest fail. Honestly, the biggest fail I had was the fact that I've been sick. I was sick for like the first 2 weeks of the year. So I would say that's a huge fail because I had a lot going on and I needed to be on 100%. So I think taking care of myself and like drinking plenty of water, eating healthy and working out, all that stuff, I need to get better at that. So yeah, making sure that as a founder I can perform, just like an athlete, how they have to take care of their bodies and like always be on, same way. It's actually pretty taxing to work all the time, and in that you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I am going to run out of battery powder. I'm about to grab my charger really quick so that I don't die on this hangout. So 1 second.
All right, no problem.
No problem.
And while we take this brief intermission, I want to remind everybody that you can follow HBCU to Startup on Twitter. You can join our Facebook page, and we can continue this discussion online. You know, HBCU to Startup is really about developing that network of people from HBCUs that are passionate about technology and entrepreneurship.
And you don't have to be an HBCU student to participate in the group, but we're primarily focused on helping young people who are minorities from underrepresented areas or demographics get into tech, learn about startups, and realize that it's possible for you to do, and that it's not something that's inaccessible or very far off. And by having uh, interviews like this and talking about our experiences with other founders from HBCUs like Jewel, we hope that you'll realize that it's possible for you as well.
Definitely. Our next question from This Begins is, Jewel, how was your experience at Google? Or specifically, how did the experience at Google lend itself to you founding this company?
Yes. So I would say my experience at Google is great, was great, is great. It helped shape my view on, first of all, it gave me exposure to technology as an industry. Before I interned at Google, summer of 2009, I really didn't have any concept of the industry behind these websites and tools and apps and things that we're using. I didn't realize that like people actually work at Google. I just knew it was a thing that I used, but I didn't understand that it was a company that people worked at. You know what I mean? I had never been exposed to it. So I think the biggest thing was just getting exposed to it, moving out to California, understanding that there's just this whole world. Silicon Valley is just, it's kind of like a whole different world. So exposure is the biggest thing. And then it gave me, it kind of got me out of my comfort zone, because my first job at Google was in sales, and I had to call people all day, like people that didn't want to talk to me. So I had to get out of being sort of shy and afraid to ask for things. I had to get out of that really quickly. So that was a good foundation piece for now, because I have to ask and talk to people that I don't necessarily want to talk to, and pitch all this. That's like preparation for it. So I say that to say, a lot of times coming straight out of school, you might have a job that you think sucks or isn't what you went to school for, you know, whatever. But sometimes you gotta just do stuff, and you'll never know how it's going to be beneficial later. So, how else? I think that I got exposure to startups working at Google, just like volunteering with, I volunteered with the first like New Me Accelerator demo day, and just saw like, oh, there are people who look like me and they're pitching their ideas. I can do that. I want to be an entrepreneur. That's something that I can do. I had coworkers who left Google and went to work at startups, and I could see sort of, oh, this is a possibility. That's something that can happen. So I think it was major exposure, just being out there and understanding sort of how the industry works.
Okay, thank you.
Another question from Miriam. She says, what would you do after Partpic has reached a level of success and stability that you're happy with? Or what would you like to do, rather?
Like, what do I want to do after Partpic?
Well, like, what's your next step once you've grown Partpic to a certain happy medium point where you're very happy with the progress?
I don't know. I don't know what that would be.
It's like, if only I could just snap my fingers and then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a serial entrepreneur. That's like my ambition, is to just keep doing businesses and more. I have a lot of things I want to do that are sort of like family related. Like my family has a farm. I want to revitalize the farm. That's like the next thing I want to do. My mom has a food delivery business. I want to help her scale that and blow that out.
Instacart.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's called Fresh Chefs. If anyone is in Nashville, any TSU students, you should check it out. FreshChefsNashville.com. The plug. What else? I want to help other people learn this whole process. So I really like it when people throw their, reach out to me and tell me, oh, this is my idea, this is what I'm trying to do, because that's part of it too. The reason I'm doing Partpic is to learn the process end to end, so I can tell other people, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. Yeah, so I think it's all going to be involved. It's all going to be business and sort of philanthropic. That's the path that I want to take.
Okay, guys,
Okay.
we only have a couple more minutes for questions. So if you have a question, this is the moment to get it in. Austin's going to read these last couple ones, and we're going to continue on.
Let's do it. So this begins says, what stages are involved? Inception. Hold on one second. Okay. How do you feel that your marketing degree was enough as you embarked on the process? Or maybe I'm not reading that right. One more time.
Kind of what stages did you go through, and how did your marketing degree influence you as you embarked on this process of starting Partpic, which you kind of
Right.
addressed earlier as well.
One thing I'll just add to what I said earlier is that your degree is not enough. Whatever you majored in is not going to be enough. You have to supplement it.
Got you.
I'm really, like I said, I'm really big on reading books about areas that I'm not as knowledgeable about. Like, for example, for fundraising, a really great book to read is Venture Deals by Brad Feld. Brad Feld. Sorry, that was my country accent coming out. That's really like it's crucial to understand like how this whole process works. So I think that you shouldn't rely on whatever you're learning in school. That's good. That's foundational. It's
Hmm.
important. But you're going to have to continue to learn. You're going to, especially if you're starting a company, it's every day. It's like you got to figure out something that you've never seen before, whether it's contracts or whether it's hiring employees or whether it's bringing on people that are not citizens. It's going to be something new every single day that you have to read up on and you have to learn.
Okay. We have a question from Helen. She says, what startup beyond yours do you really, really admire?
My startup that I'm kind of obsessed with right now is Slack. I think Stuart Butterfield is a really great founder, and their growth is is like amazing. And I like the fact that Stuart Butterfield also speaks out about issues, and I just like his perspective. Um, that's one. I have friends in Atlanta that are doing some really cool things that I'm excited about too, like Monsieur and Texturize. I'm really a fan of those guys. Um, I like and Mecca, my friend, doing that. I'm a fan of Blavity, Morgan. So I'm actually like rooting for a lot of their black founders. Um, yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Um, Gregory has a question, and he says, could you list a few ways that you give back to your community? Things such as, being on Google Hangouts like this.
Yeah. So I've been involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters for a while since I've lived in Atlanta. I have one thing that I'm super proud of is an organization called 12 Days of Christmas. We did a super cool fundraiser in Atlanta back in December, and we were able to provide gifts for the number was 70 children, underprivileged children in Atlanta, which was really a great experience. Um, what else? Like I said, I'm involved with Amplify for Good, which is we do like hackathons and cool events in Atlanta and other places. So those are my top ones that I'm really passionate about right now.
Cool,
Okay,
cool.
good.
Here's a question from Daniel, and he says, what unique challenges do you face as a double minority, and how do you overcome it? Thanks for doing this. You are an awesome mentor. You were an awesome mentor at the Nesby Hackathon last year.
Oh, thanks.
So he remembers you. Nesby, Region 2 over here.
Too
Oh
hype?
yeah, I love Nesby. I've been having fun the last couple of years at the conferences. So and I hope to be there this year too. Um, but um, oh, double minority. Okay, yeah, that does not make it easier. It's already hard to be a founder. The fact that I'm a woman and I'm black and I'm in an industry, not just the tech industry, but the industrial distribution space where it's even wider and even more male and even like older than tech.
You picked
is,
an interesting cross section there. Now that you say that, it's like, wow, that just hit me.
yeah. So not even honestly, it's like I'm young also in black and
So it's a
woman.
triple minority.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, it definitely doesn't make it any easier. I definitely have to deal with comments and people making assumptions about what I know or what I don't know. But honestly, all of that goes back to controlling your mind, because you could let that stuff get to you, or you could be like, I know what I'm building is tight. I know
Yes.
my capabilities. So you can think
No
whatever you want to
problem.
think, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I can't let that stuff get to me too much.
Thank you so much, Joel. We really appreciate you participating and, being featured on this edition of HBCU to Startup. We are looking forward to reading more about your future success with Partpic and can't wait to read your book.
Need to work on that. Thank you guys for having me. This has been fun, and good
Yeah,
luck. I'm so proud of you all for what you're doing.
thank you, thank you. We're enjoying watching your story progress and learning more from you as well.
Yes,
All
indeed.
right.
Join us again soon for another edition of HBCU to Startup. Thank you.
Thank you.